Welcome, everyone, to the second of our webinar series. My name is Ron, and I am with Spirit of Travel. A very quick introduction for the benefit of those that have not worked with us before. We are a bespoke travel brokerage, meaning that we provide travel services, but we aim to do so in a much more customized way than is traditionally found. So we do that by spending a bit more time getting to really understand who the traveler is, who you are, what drives you, what you like, what you don't like, what is the driving force behind your trip, so that we can best match the experiences with your aspirations and expectations. So we've been in operation for 5 years as Spirit of Travel, although I've been in the industry quite a bit before, longer than that, that is. And the reason that I'm able to provide a high level of service to my clients is because I have a network of extremely skilled and knowledgeable destination experts around the world and product experts around the world. So this webinar series is really about me pulling on these amazing contacts I have and that I work with to basically tell the tale of their destination. So Neil is our guest tonight, and he is with a company called Wild Earth, and I have had a working relationship with Wild Earth for about 11 years, although Neil and I have only just now met, as he is in Adelaide and dialing in, especially for tonight. So just to give you an idea, generally speaking, when I do sit with my clients and I do an initial consultation, we're starting to figure out, who they are and what drives them, and creating a bit of an understanding and a profile. I then go with that knowledge to someone like Neil and his team, and I say, this is who my client is. This is what really matters to them, and this is the rough sketch that we have. Work with me to iron it out and make sure that we have a real winning recipe. So without further ado, I would like Neil to take the floor and run us through. We will have a Q&A at the end, so please keep the questions coming as you go. I have some of my own, Neil, and we will run through those at the end. Thank you, Neil.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome to our little presentation. So I'll quickly share my screen and we'll get stuck into it. So a quick brief about Wild Earth Travel. We are the small ship and the expedition cruising experts globally, and it's a company that's been running for quite a long time. I think 15 years all up in its current guise, but prior to that, probably 30 to 40 years of experience realistically. Aaron, the owner of the company, has been expedition leading on, especially on Antarctic ships, since he was in his 20s, and has probably been there about 200 times himself. But everyone in our office has traveled to Antarctica by one way or another, with various different companies. So we can come with a vast array of experience and wealth. We work with about 120 ship operators globally. And that equates to about 250 ships. In Antarctica, just to give you an idea, there's about currently 48 to 49 ships that will currently cruise to Antarctica, with the vast majority going from the peninsula, and I'll talk a bit more about that. But just a quick intro on what we are and what we do. With Wild Earth, as you'll see from this screen, we have shapes, sizes, all sorts of different ships that we work with, from twin-masted sailing vessels to small 4-person riverboats to the 100 or the 200 passenger state-of-the-art vessels that can crush ice and head to the poles. The greatest thing about a small ship is it can get you anywhere. I love showing this photo. Yes, I know it's not far-flung, but it's one of those places where I say to people, a small ship can take you anywhere, and this is the city of London. So on a small ship, you can actually get on in London, unlike any other ship in the world, and you can start a cruise from there if you're particularly doing something in the Northern Hemisphere. But the small ships get you everywhere. They get you to travel around comfortably. They can take you to far-flung places through the Mediterranean, the Baltic, the Arctic, to places like Scotland. This is the Isle of St Kilda, and the only way to get to this island is by a small ship. It is literally the only way to visit this double UNESCO listed place, and an absolutely stunning heritage site. And it's about getting out and meeting interesting people and places. So this is just a welcoming committee from Melanesia, something a little bit different. But this is your welcoming committee when you head to Antarctica. Hopefully you'll get to see plenty of these guys. This is the Adelie penguins. And you'll see in the background there how we get out and about in Antarctica, and I'll talk more about that. But the big difference probably between small ship and expedition cruising, they both use sub 200 passenger ships as a general rule. But with expedition cruising, you get on and off the ship via an expedition method, which will be something like a Zodiac that's listed there. With the small ship, you'll probably tie alongside. So in Antarctica, there are no ports. So that is full expedition. So let's talk about the options for Antarctica. As I said, there's multiple options to travel there. And looking at sort of the main points of difference, you'll see the red circle there. The quickest, shortest route is between those 2 points, the southern tip of Chile and Argentina, and vast majority of the ships leave from Ushuaia, which is on the island of Terra del Fuego in Argentina, or they travel from Puerto Arenas, which is in Chile, a little bit further up the Beagle Channel. And that time to cross there, if you're cruising, is roughly 2 days. So as you'll see, that is the shortest, quickest, most point. Now, I'd say 99% of the cruisers travel from southern Chile or Argentina. And there's 1% that will travel from New Zealand. So we'll talk about that in a little bit of detail later. But if you're looking for that longer trip, that's about 6 or 7 days crossing. But the bonus of the New Zealand itineraries is that you get to visit islands, southern islands of New Zealand, and also places like Macquarie. Less people have visited Macquarie than gone up Everest. So it's a real remote opportunity there. But we'll focus in on the Antarctic region, as we call it, the peninsula. And I'll start with a small video, hopefully. It just shows you the vastness of Antarctica. People don't realize some of the highest mountains in the world are actually in Antarctica. What you're going to see and do there is far more interesting, far more remote, and far more unique than anywhere else in the world that you could travel to. And that's using one of the particular companies, Ponant, which is a French company that we work with. So they're French English speaking on board the ships. And they probably have the biggest range of ships traveling down there. They have 9 different vessels that can travel to Antarctica. Including they are the only one that run with an expedition, fully expedition ice-rated icebreaker that can travel deeper into sort of some of the packed ice channels down there. But that's the only company. So let's talk about a typical trip. I'll give you an idea of the recent trip I did, times of year, when to travel, and things like that. The main season for Antarctica is late October, early November, to be realistic, through till March. What you get to see and do over that period of time, so it's their summer, it ranges dramatically. If you head down there early in the season, this is a photo of Ushuaia, the port town, and you'll see a lot of snow on the peaks. If you went down there, say, later in March, that's where you will see no snow on the peaks and very different. So you're talking at the beginning of springtime through to the end of summer. Get fantastic views instantly as soon as you arrive in Ushuaia. And as soon as that happens, you get to see and do a lot. You can do some fantastic walks straight from Ushuaia, or you do small boat trips out to the Beagle Channel, where you hopefully see where we're looking at here is Chile and over the mountains there. Very proud Argentinians. They will fly their little blue and white flags everywhere. But you get some fantastic views as you're doing these first days. And that's also where you get your first wildlife spots. As you'll see on this, you're looking at this wonderful piece of rock there. You're thinking, well, it's a great brown rock. Dotted all over the rock are harbour seals. And on this particular trip, we saw let's say he would have been about 1.5 ton elephant seal who had decided to lob up early down there. And you don't see them very often. And he took over a whole beach area, so there were no other smaller seals nearby. So we always say enjoy it. Beautiful scenery there. Most of the itineraries start with a night in Ushuaia, and I always say to people, have a night there no matter what. So if the itinerary doesn't include a night in Ushuaia, I would recommend you have an extra night. You get these beautiful sunrises and sunsets over the mountains there. Some really great food down there and interesting things to see and do there before you head out onto Antarctica. And this is showing you just some of the ships. So these are 3 different ships in the port. You'll have 3 to 4 ships in port at any one time. As you'll see, that's probably where you see the most ships. After that, you may not see a ship again for the 10 or 11 or 13 days that you're away, depending on the trip you're doing. All the ships talk to each other. The rule is in Antarctica that you can have no more than 100 people at any one time ashore. And so what the ships do at their various points is they talk to each other and make sure that they don't double up where they're turning up into anchorages or spots to visit. So it is very much unique, and it's 100 people ashore anytime that you're looking at these itineraries. As you'll see on there, 3 very different ships, and I'll talk about the ranges and ships and things like that in a bit more detail. I traveled with the Aurora expedition. As you'll see, they have some of the newest, I would like to say the newest, meanest bad boys on the market. There's now about 9 of these style of vessel. They're called the X-Bow. They glide through the water. They tend to cut the waves rather than rolling through the waves. So they're super stable. You can hit some really rough weather patterns and still be comfortable on board. And they cut down the travel times to and from Antarctica as well. So that's a big bonus there. And Aurora has 3 of these particular ships, but we've worked with, I think it's about 6 different companies that have this style of ship now. And then you've got the slightly larger vessels. So these are about 100, 140 passengers. So good size as well. The biggest size of the ships that travel down there are around 500, but I always say, look for anything sub 200. Because you've got more chances then of getting on and off the ship a lot more often. And that's what it's all about. Each ship pretty much runs with the same situation. The cabins are always a very decent size across the board. Pretty much across all the ships that you're given, you'll see that folded up blue thing there. That's a jacket that you'll be given to keep and wear. You may not ever wear it again because it is quite warm. And there's not really places that cold on Earth that you may travel and use it again. But super comfortable, super waterproof. And the bonus of this particular jacket too was two jackets in one, so you can split it up and use it that way. They all provide water bottles and then gumboots as well. So the main things that you need to bring is layers of clothing, from your thermal layers through to your heavier duty layers. Waterproof overtrousers. I recommend a really good pair of waterproof overtrousers. Any pair you can get. And that's it. When you go on and offshore, actually use Wellington boots or gum boots, all-purpose waterproof boots. So you don't need anything for going ashore, essentially. You walk in those along the shore. The reason they do that is that they leave the least amount of damage onto the continent itself, and they're easily cleaned so that you're not taking anything on and off. As you see, the common spaces, a lot of these ships are very vast and you get a great chance to view. So quite a lot of the ships do have balconies now, but a lot of them don't. Doesn't matter because you have these fantastic open spaces which are either on deck or, like this one, a fantastic view spot where you just sit there and watch the world go by. Libraries and everything aboard. The big key thing about Antarctica is the wildlife. What I love to say is that you start wildlife spotting pretty early. So this was 30 minutes from the port as we're heading out. A small video just of what I took. The Drake Passage is that little piece of water that we talked about between the the peninsula of South America and the peninsula of Antarctica. Has two names for it. They call it the Drake Lake when it's nice and calm and smooth, or the Drake Shake when it's the other way around. Here's an example of the Drake Shake. We hit 4 to 5 meter swells. So big waves, you can see that there. That's a shot from my balcony, from my cabin. Super comfortable. We just rolled over and back through it. And then literally 15 minutes later, we got this. So you get this wonderful calm ocean. So it's a real mix. You get a bit of everything, and it wouldn't be Antarctica if you didn't go down there and get a taste for everything as you go. So that was our sort of first day of travel. And our second day, we start seeing these big bad boys, the big icebergs that start to crack off, the big tabular bergs, as you'll see there. They make fantastic viewing. You can take 100 photos of the same iceberg, and as you go around it, it changes shape and different look each time. Highly worth it, and getting up nice and early for a sunrise shot as well. And then we hit our first destination. So the peninsula of Antarctica is full of really unique islands as well that you'll visit. And the first one that a lot of the ones travel to is a place called Deception Island. Deception Island is a caldera. It's still a live volcano underneath there somewhere. So you're coming in here, and we get fantastic views of the first. We had some albatross following us, some shearbills following us, some guillemots. But there you get the first chance, and this is early in the season, as you see. This is looking back through the caldera. We did a bit of a walk up to the hill, and the bonus of the caldera there is that the water is actually quite warm. It's a little bit different to the rest of Antarctica, so it slightly changes it up. But the bonus of these places is that you walk around. So this is an old whaling station, and that's 100-year-old rescue boat or boat that they used out there to go and hunt the whales way back when. It's parked up there. But I love the fact that you can see the island slowly sucking it back in, saying, hey, let's turn it back to normal. And then right next to it, we've got a crab-eater seal just sitting there. And this is what you get there. You get these fantastic views. You get these great little views of the penguins. These are Adelie penguins. Sorry, Gentoo penguins running through, and they were just cruising around. They just walk around, and you can see the smoke coming off the water. So it's actually, the water's actually quite warm here. So these guys get it pretty comfortable. And this gives you an example of what the land will look like later in the season when the snow melts and it's dry land, and you'll see the guys just wandering around and doing things there. You will travel out by Zodiac to see everything. Your Zodiac guides are all there, they're all trussed up, and then we get out and hopefully get these beautiful colors. So you'll see in the background, the sky here is dark and drizzle, but the colors of the ice, they're so vivid and so beautiful. It's amazing. The other thing I forgot to mention earlier on is that you always have a full expedition team on board the ships. They'll be geologists, marine biologists, historians, a bit of everything. Pretty much every ship now travels with a photographer who will give you tips on taking photos. And you don't have to have the super duper digital SLR. Luckily, I've got one, but he actually spent time teaching us how to use our iPhone to take photos. He said it's sometimes easier to take a quick photo with your iPhone because you've got gloves on and you use your nose to open it and take the photos and things like that. So this was actually taken with an iPhone. So just slightly different photos. And you get up close and personal, as you see, you get different angles and you get different looks at all the ice or coming back to the ship. So this is how you come on and off the ship in quick, fast mode. Managed to do a bit of fast trekking on this one. But you'll see that it's relatively smooth. There's sort of bumpy up and down as you're traveling back in. But this is see how you can come back into the ship, and everyone is there to help. And as you'll see, all the guys in the red jackets, they're there to grab your boat, grab your Zodiac, to get you on board and get you up quickly and safely. The big bonus about going early season is the sheer number of penguins that are there. So early season, so November through till say December, January, the penguins are coming ashore. They're starting to nest. You see these sheer numbers. There's thousands of these penguins there. They are coming ashore. They're waiting for the snow to melt so they can build their nests, lay their eggs, and raise their young. The penguins are there all season. They've got sheer massive numbers at the beginning of the season as they're coming ashore, and you'll see different shots of the penguins as we go through. And then the other seabirds start coming through, and these are the shearbills. These guys love to pose for you, love to land on the ship, love to look around. So you get some really beautiful shots. Well, hopefully you get to see this. And there's a couple of shots of this various times, but you can see how the penguins move around. When the snow's there, they can use their bellies to move fast. Otherwise, it's just sort of wandering around. You will hear and smell the penguins before you see them generally. When you live on a diet of shellfish and seafood all the time, it's pretty interesting. And so you get some fantastic views, but you will get different seasons in a day down there. We hit one day where we hit this much snow. This was 4 hours of snow. It was fantastic. You're watching all the snowfall. And the next morning, it was picturesque like this. It was beautiful and clear. So it changes so quickly. I love this shot here because you can see the penguins in the distance over there. They've wandered over to a ridge, but you can see all the penguin superhighways there. That's the little highways that they make and they walk around on. This is just showing you in action again as occurring on. The wind was up, so they're getting a little bit of a push along, but you can see how they just move around, get around everything very quickly. We could spend hours watching the penguins, and it was only really, we would drag back to the ship sometimes because we were just having too much fun with them. We hit places where the icebergs get stuck and then they start to melt and give these fantastic views and hovers. But every now and then you see this and you're coming around a corner and there's a crab-eater seal just sitting on there. You'll have various Weddell and crab-eater seals down there, and they will be sitting on ice floes, relaxing here. You can see about 4 or 5 that we saw on this very Zodiac cruise. I think on this day we saw about 25 to 30 seals, all just sort of chilling on the ice floes, relaxing and taking in the world. And then you're visiting sort of some beautiful landmarks around here. This particular channel is called the Lamar Channel. It's a very narrow channel, and you pretty much every Antarctic vessel will travel down this channel because you feel like you can touch the edges as you travel through. But you get these fantastic options for the birds that come through here, and they sit on the ships. They're very inquisitive, and they come to look at what you see and do, and things like that. And then as you're traveling back to the ship, sometimes you get this, which is the dolphin, what they call porpoising by the penguins. And this is just a group of penguins all looking to come ashore. So they were following our Zodiac as if it was a lead penguin as they were heading ashore. A lot of people don't think about the history of Antarctica. There's a lot to see and do down there. You've got the early explorers, Shackletons, the Scots, the Mawsons that all traveled down there. But there are still these fantastic little huts all over the place. And this is Port Lockroy, and it's a small hut port called Damoy. And it's a hut that they use for refuge, and they used for refuge. This was actually opened when we were there for the season, and the British Antarctic Society send down 4 or 5 people who live there for the summer in Port Lockroy. It is the only place you can actually post a postcard. You can buy a postcard from them. They'll send you an English stamp. You fill it all out, you give it back to them, and then it'll take about 6 months to get back to you or to whoever you posted it to. Because what they do with those particular postcards, because it's a British landmark, so to speak, they send them on ships that are visiting the Falkland Islands. They drop them off at the Falkland Island post office, who will then process them. That can take anywhere up to a week to 2 weeks for them to process. Then they send them back to the UK, and then they send them on from there. So, but it's a unique little piece of things. But you get to visit and go inside these huts and have a look, and it's just like stepping back in time. There's cans of Spam and Keen's mustard and all sorts of things sort of dotted around in these things. So they're actually really worth visiting. And this is the main hut at Port Lockroy, as you'll see there, that we've got there. So they spend 6 months a year living on that tiny little island, which is the size of 2 football fields. And there's about close to 2,500 penguins on this island as well. So they're very much there to look out for the penguins, and also sort of give you a conduit and chats about yesteryear and what it was like down there. Traveling through and taking photos of these various ice. We got taught how to take photos up close and far away. It was quite handy. And as you'll see, you see just wildlife in every corner and turn. Here, this is a unique landing site, and it's a good one to show from my trip, particularly because the snow has started to melt, and you can see the rocks there. That's where the penguins and the guillemots and the murres and the various other birds down there, the shags, are starting to sort of nest up and things like this. So this is a unique nesting site because there's a mixture of 3 different birds there. So it's not often, quite often you just see sheer numbers of penguins on sheer numbers of the shags, but it just sort of changes in different spots. And this one is where they share it all. And the other thing that you get to do on board a vast majority of ships now, they do a thing called citizen science on pretty much every ship. And this could be anything from penguin counting to drilling ice cores to see how deep the ice is and how the ice changes. So this one, we use satellite tracking, and they were looking at the cloud flow and how the cloud movements, and they were explaining how weather patterns change and things like that. You don't spend a lot of time doing it. You spend an hour or 2 talking about it. You have lecturers on board who will talk about what you've seen each day, and they'll have unique insights into history and also things like that. But it's just another way to keep you really super interested when you're down there. And then, of course, you do wonderful things like when you hit Antarctica proper, they crack the champagne so you can have champagne on ice. Pretty much simple as that. And it was a great little way to say, hey, we've hit Antarctica and this is our special treat from when we're there. You get different patterns each day. As I said, you can shoot in dark light, bright light, you get everything. And it's really, you cannot not take a bad photo out there. Just showing you different ways and things like that. You can see the little yellow markers. So the guides will always mark out a trail so that you follow. And the reason they do that is it's safety, but also if there are penguins about, we don't want the penguins to fall in our big footstep holes as they're walking around. Just showing you, I'll just skip through this one. Yeah, so this is just another way of showing you how to see what it's all like, the distance and how we travel back to the ships. And that takes roughly about 15, 20 minutes, usually from port to port. Obviously this one I'm doing in no time at all. It's giving you a great view of what the expedition ships look like from the outside. Last morning as we travel back, and this is the one thing I sort of say to people, always look out the windows, always go and have a quick look up on deck. And this was the last morning as we were coming back in, we were chased by dolphins, but we also had a vast array of shearbills, albatross, just cruising, and they cruise along by the ship. So I always say, look out the back so you can see what's happening there. And then when we hit back in Antarctica, there's always one thing I would say, go and have a look at the artwork around the buildings in Ushuaia. This is just a fantastic last shot of a penguin for us, a great piece of art on one of the buildings there. But what I wanted to say is that Antarctica is key thing it's about the icebergs. It's about light. Sometimes you've got to get up at 3 a.m, but you'll wake up anyway because the light is up and you'll go, oh, I want to get a great photo. So this is a 3 a.m. shot when they hit the pack ice on one of the particular trips. And you get these fantastic times a day. You can put your clocks away there. It's about hopefully being on Zodiacs and you come around the corner from what you think is just another iceberg because you've seen a lot and you get these fantastic views of a penguin group hanging out. Or if you have the time and you can travel further to the Falkland Islands and South Georgia, you hopefully then get to see some of the big guys. On the main peninsula, the main penguins that you'll see on the peninsula cruises are the Gentoos, the Adelies, and the Chinstraps. So they're the sort of 3 mid-range penguins. The big boys are the king penguins and the emperor penguins. The king penguins you'll see in vast majority on South Georgia, as you'll see here. These are 4 guys holding court up the front with 1 million of their mates behind. If you can see the brown lines there, they are all the chicks. So this is shot around December, January time, before the parents are off hunting and filling up the bellies of the chicks. And then if you want to see emperor penguins, they tend to be the other side, and you'd need to travel to Antarctica from New Zealand for that. We always say, take your time and have a look around. There's hard and fast rules about interaction with the animals. You can sit and watch, that's no problem. And officially you can't go within 5 meters of a penguin, but remember, penguins don't know distance. So they're fairly inquisitive and they'll come and have a look. And hopefully you'll see them doing their morning exercises, going out for a swim like that. And these are all shots taken from recent trips. Going for a walk along the beach. So, you've got different styles of penguins here, but they're just cruising on the beach with the ships in the background. And then hopefully you get these shots to take the fantastic selfie. I always like to say it is the ultimate selfie destination. If you get the sun out like that, it's the perfect shot. Or it's about seeing this wonderful bird life that you don't expect, the albatross. And you've got wandering albatross down there with 3-meter wingspans that follow the ships. And you don't realize how big they are until they get up close and personal. Or hopefully seeing some of the seals. This is a juvenile moving into adolescence, into the big adulthoods down there. And this is the big elephant seal down there. So that was the size of pretty much of the one we saw on the beach. He was by himself taking over the beach. So there's lots of different ways to get to and from Antarctica. Taking the ship is the sort of the vast majority of the 2-day cruise. You can fly down there and land on an island called King George Island. So there's a lot that do fly cruises now to cut out that sort of 2 time. If you're short on time as well, that's quite a good option. And you land in, but then you'll jump on these ships and cruise the peninsula and see all those sites that I've just shown you. Or you can take further afield out to Falklands and South Georgia. And so you're looking at about 6 or 7 days at sea, punctuated with these stops in these beautiful places. But the one thing I love to finish with, and this was sort of one of my last shots there, is always making sure that you look at the different reflections. And this is just a beautiful reflection shot that we got, crystal clear day. The water down there is super clear. It's incredible what you can see underneath the water, even if you're just sitting in the zodiacs. It's amazing. So hopefully you enjoyed my presentation. I'm looking forward to any questions that you may have. As I said, know the area pretty well, and our team down there are probably some of the best experts out there. Thank you.
I wanted to start us off with a question, Neil. I'm actually not aware of how far inland is permitted to go on these cruises. I know it's going to vary day to day and cruise ship to cruise ship, but how far will people go?
That is really going to depend on levels of fitness and levels of availability of getting ashore and things like that. Most of the time on these particular cruises, you don't go more than, say, 100 to 200 meters inland from the coast. That's probably the biggest distance that you go, because there's so much to see and do and things like that. They want to give you the time to experience, especially if there's wildlife about. But it's also the sheer chance. You can go as far inland as you wish, as long as it's safe to do so. But it's just really running out of that time and things like that. We don't visit a lot of the bases down there. So Port Lockroy is a sort of one heritage base that a lot of companies visit, but each country has a scientific base down there doing research. And they tend to be a little bit further in sometimes. So you just don't tend to go there. But you don't need supreme fitness. It's just walking. It literally is just walking. And a lot of people get a little bit worried about, I've got to climb a mountain and things like that. No. If you want to do that stuff, there are particular cruises that focus on mountaineering and alpine skiing, where you have to walk up the hill first with your skis on to ski back down. But that's, a very small percentage of the population. But it's definitely, if you've got those people who say, I want to ski everywhere, they want to tick the box, then Antarctica is usually their last box.
Rightfully so. Jude, did you have a question, Jude?
No, I've just been enjoying listening. But I did Shackleton's Hut. Is that still in Antarctica, or is it anywhere near where you go?
No, so with to see Shackleton and Scott's huts, they're both very close to each other, but they are in the Ross Sea region. So that the only way to see those huts is if you take one of the cruises that leaves from New Zealand. That is it. And they're amazing, absolutely amazing. They are living museums. They have still got hams hanging on the wall in there. They've got all the artwork as they left it. Literally, as they walked out the door, they've left it. And because no one's been in there and they were shut up, everything is perfectly preserved. There's books and papers everywhere and things like that. So the only place to see Scott and the Shackleton Hut is from the Ross Sea. So that's that longer trip. It takes about 30 days all in. But if you've got time, I highly recommend it. Plus, the bonus of that is that you've got Macquarie Island as an option. So you see those fantastic king penguin colonies. But you also have pretty much every trip that travels to the Scott and Shackleton region or the Ross Sea region will see emperor penguins, because that's where emperor penguin colonies are. And that's the big 1.2 meter penguins. They're big guys.
And I understand that Macquarie Island is in its own right as unique as Galapagos Islands, being but more aviation oriented. It's a variety of birds that aren't found elsewhere. So
birds and some very unique flora, as they call it, the mega flora down there. So these are plants that, if you had them in our back garden, they'd probably be 2, 3, 10 centimeters. Down there, they're 2, 3 meters.
Right. Oh, excellent. Another question's come through. So if you leave from the ship styles or the caliber of ships that you're seeing out of the New Zealand market being a farther journey, are they rated differently? Are they tend to be of a certain type versus the ones that are coming out of Shuai?
You'll find that all the 1I ice-rated ships, so these are the ships that can bump into ice and move slowly through ice quite comfortably, not the icebreaker. They're the one level below. There's only one icebreaker in the world. But the 1A ice-rated ships will go from New Zealand, so they're fairly comfortable ships as well. I'd class them all as sort of 4, 4.5, 5-star ships, depending on the company that you're looking at. But there's only 3 or 4 companies that go out of New Zealand. Whereas out of South America, you can have a full range from the sort of the 3-star real scientific style to the 5-star uber luxury. And that's because there's just a more choice from there, and it's a shorter travel time.
That leads into another thing that Aaron taught me years ago, which I if you could expand for the benefit of everyone. There's a big difference between the ships that touch the Antarctic Circle and are technically in the area, and those that get right into to the more precious areas. Could you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, so pretty much every ship that we deal with are the ones that go into the Antarctic or get into Antarctica proper. So they're all expedition style ships. There are some bigger 500 to 1,000 passenger ships that visit Antarctic waters, and they will class as going to Antarctica, but no one will get ashore, and that's the big difference. The smaller ships, you will get ashore and you will taste it, you will feel it, you will smell it, you will do everything. But with those slightly bigger ones, they're the ones that cruise in the waters, and they can visit the Falkland Islands per se, but they can't go ashore primarily because, again, it's a treaty that every company sign up to. It's 100 people ashore at any one time because they really want to look after this last true wilderness left in the world.
Now, I recall it's been a few years since I looked at it in particular, anybody inquired about it, but are there still circumnavigation out of New Zealand where they'll actually, or partial circumnavigation?
There's a couple of itineraries that do the partial circumnavigation. So they will leave from South America, and then they will partially circumnavigate around through the Ross Sea region, and then they'll finish in New Zealand. We only tend to get one a year. As a general rule, either early or late season. When generally late season, when the ice flow is broken up a bit more and there's less things to worry about when they're hitting sort of the ice regions. But we didn't have one this year, as far as I know. They're not run every year, so they're fairly few and far between. So when they do come above, they are worth getting on because it's a unique way of seeing all of Antarctica. Well, not all, but partially all of Antarctica.
Oh, that's brilliant. Could you tell us a little bit more about the fly cruise? So I understand this. It was. I apologize. What was the name of the island it lands on?
In King George Island.
King George Island.
So yeah, it's So there's South Shetland Islands, as they like to call it, or the South Shetlands. I think it's the South Shetlands or South Sandwich. I always get them mixed up. Anyway, they are the island chain just near the Antarctica proper. In that peninsula. So they're in that peninsula. It's the northernmost island is King George Island, and they have a sight-only runway, so you can land a plane there as long as you can see it. You can land it there. Massive runway because it's used for evacuation for if they need it, or for getting gear down to some of the bases quickly. That's where a lot of the countries use for a landing, so that they can get their gear by boat then quickly around and things like that. Their flights all tend to come from Chile. So you will leave from Chile on that. And the planes they're using now are 200 passenger jets. So beautiful, comfortable jets that they're using in and out. There's a lot more companies now offering this as a service because they realize people are sometimes short on time. So if you take 4 days of cruising to, 2.5, 3 hours of flying each way, it brings in that element. You still see everything that you can see in and around the peninsula. The only one thing that drops off is you won't have that wonderful chance of the bird life following the boats and the dolphins surfing the wake, or possibly whales and things like that in the crossings. But there's not one way that says it's worse or better than the other. To be honest, if you're short on time, you go the fly cruise option because you're still going to kick those goals with the key highlights. Absolutely. And it's a great way, especially if you're doing a longer trip around South America, to build that into a 4-6 week itinerary.
Right. What about the Southern Lights?
You can see them because it's primarily winter time that you sort of get them there. You can sometimes see them at the beginning of the season. So or even at the end of the season, when it's getting dark enough, because it's quite bright. So December 21 down there is pretty much 24 hours of daylight. You don't see a lot. So it would have to be sort of late October or even late March. You may get them, but again, it depends where the lights are. I saw them in when was it? March 2 years ago from Queenstown. So we were lucky, super lucky. But you can see them from Tasmania and Australia sometimes. So, but it's primarily winter that you see them more often, or that sort of cusp of the edges of the season.
Great. Are there any other questions from our
Yeah,
guests here.
what are the months of the season? When does it start and when does it finish?
So the season kicks off pretty much sort of 31st of October. You sort of say that's when the first ones, and a lot of those shots that you saw with the snow to the water's edge were October, November, through till sort of mid-March is really the last ones. The people that tend to go later in the season of March are especially those who love whales, because the sheer numbers of whales down there by then increase dramatically, because the plankton and the phytoplankton have all grown to a good enough size. They've all given birth to their babies in Mexico or Australia or New Zealand, wherever their birthing grounds are. They've taken them down there to feed up, essentially. So they're going down there to feed up on the planktons and what's down there before they head back north again and rotate their season. So,
So, oh no, carry on.
no,
Carry on.
yeah. So in terms of wildlife, it's sort of penguins early on. And in bigger numbers, but you'll see them all the time, all the way through. You may see a whale or two early season, but you see a lot more late season. So that's sort of January through till March is a sort of big time to see the whales. Penguins will run from October, November through till March, but bigger numbers early season, and they drop away because there's only tends to be one parent looking after a chick, or even the chicks are just ashore and the parents are both off fishing and hunting. In terms of the flying birds, all year round, orca, you'll see them from time to time at different times. They tend to come out in a bit more bigger pods when they're hunting at springtime, when seal calves and things like that are around, because it's just a standard way that they hunt. They look for the easy prey. And you'll see seals pretty much all year. A lot of people ask me about vegetation. No, you won't see vegetation down there. So if they see something green on Antarctica, they are amazed, and that's probably a rarity.
Yeah. What from a photographic point of view, what's the best sort of time to go to get maybe the best opportunity? I know you can take fantastic photos all the time around. I'm thinking wildlife and biggest number of wildlife.
Yeah, so if you want to time it where you've got the biggest chance to see as much wildlife, it's probably January. Because you've still got large numbers of penguins and the whales are starting to come in, and all the other wildlife will be there. Plus, you're also looking at those January still, you're looking at 22-hour days. So you've got a lot of good light down there then. Weather-wise, it changes all the time. And you saw in mine that we had 4 seasons in a day, easy. So it just happened that you popped out at the right time, best light and things like that. The only downside about January is that if you want that beautiful sunrise, sunset stuff, it's not as good. That's the only downside.
Okay. And the light, what's it like? Is it sort of like when you're photographing normally, the light at midday isn't good, but it's morning and afternoon? The light quite different there?
No, the light is very different there. You can take photos at all times of the day. Because the weather patterns do change quite regularly, you can take sort of photos at all times of the day. Those sort of iceberg shots that were different times, they were all taken at different. One was 10 a.m., one was around midday, one was about 4 p.m., and they're all slightly different. But that's all depend on what was happening above us primarily.
So it's the position means the sun doesn't cast a stronger shadow, or
pretty much. It doesn't get. I'm just thinking when shadow.
Because the timing has to do with the shadow you normally get.
It's primarily you can get around it. But the other bonus is that because you're in zodiacs a lot too, if you are out looking to take photos and things like that, or on the ship, you can go from one side of the ship to the other side of the ship, and it's completely different. And with the zodiacs, they can maneuver you to be in the right space to take the photos. And the good thing about the expedition team is that they understand that, because they all take their own photos as well. So they are always looking, this is a good spot. This is a good side to see this little island. There was one particular shot that we got, which was an iceberg that started to, deform and change its shape. It was beautiful. Had a beautiful central hole in the middle. And our expedition guide who was doing the Zodiac, he went past and he turned around and goes, right, hang on, we're going back and go show you something. And then he cruised on really slowly. He said, right, get your cameras up now. And timed it so that we could get a photo of the mountain in the background in the hole of the shot.
Wow.
So it's sort of those type of things that they look out for as well. So they will add every chance to get a good photo. And you always ask the question, hey, can we go back around again and take another photo? And they will do it without fail. Provided they don't have to get on the ship to get out of there in a hurry, no problem.
Fantastic. Neil, we're getting close to the end of our time with you here. So I just wanted to ask you for a really quick list. What you do, the companies you work with, what they do in Antarctica works very well, from my understanding, to pick up and drop into tropical regions like the Galapagos and Papua New Guinea. It's certainly the Arctic Circle, and along the northwest patch of Canada. Would you mind rattling off? Your presentation's not that. Would you mind rattling off some of these destinations just to see if it sparks anyone?
Yeah, well, the bonus of a small ship is that we can get you, if there's a piece of water, we can get you there. That's pretty much how it works. So yeah, sort of your big polar ones are your Arctic and your Antarctics, but anywhere in between, you've got the Norwegian coastline, the fjord system up there. You've got the New Zealand fjord system. So there's two different ones. We can travel through the Mediterranean for something a little bit different and use a 30-passenger ship rather than 100. So you're really getting that intimate feel along the Croatian coast or the Mediterranean through the Greek islands and things like that. Closer to home, we've got great itineraries around New Zealand and Australia as well, especially the Kimberley across the top of Australia. And that's probably the best way to see the Kimberley is by expedition ship. And that's just amazing that you can see something so different. But you've got Indonesia, Micronesia, Melanesia, through the Philippines up to Japan, and there's some fantastic itineraries around Japan. Great way to see it. Alaska Inside Passage. You will see them advertised heavily. The big ship cruises. I've done both. The small ship, when you wake up the first morning on a small ship in Alaska Inside Passage, looking at a glacier with a coffee on the top deck, and a whale pops up and spurts right next to you, you suddenly go, I've won this one straight away. Or if you've seen the bears on the beaches and things like that. Through Baja, California, Mexico, the Caribbean on a small ship done differently is always really interesting. So just anywhere there's a piece of water, we usually have something somewhere or another. Or even small ship expedition style rivers, and places like India, the Ganges and the Brahmaputra, or the Mekong and the Halong Bay and the Red River in the north of Vietnam. Just doing those places differently on a small expedition style riverboat, even better.
Magic. Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, Neil. Well, I think I'll have to have you back for Northwest Passage and a few other destinations again in about 6 months' time. Next month, I would like to invite you all to come and join us again for our next webinar, which will be featured on Egypt. And so we have two lovely ladies that I like to work with that are based in Egypt. Their family company has been running for 30 years. And they are the sort of partner that I would reach out to craft really custom itineraries. So it'll be great to have them come along and talking about all of the exciting off the beaten track elements that they do beyond just your usual 7-day, this is what Egypt is. There's so much more, and they're really going to dive into what that country has to offer. So for today, I just want to say thank you so much, Neil, for coming here and sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you so much to our guests for making the time. And if you're watching this online after the fact, make sure to get to our website and sign up for the next one. It would be lovely to have you. Thanks again, and enjoy your evening.